Today I'm taking this craft pumpkin and turning it into the cutest little mini pumpkin fall house, and I'm so excited to bring you along on this journey. I started by cutting a hole in my craft pumpkin. These pumpkins are hollow and they're meant for carving, and so it was the perfect thing to open up and build a little house inside of. I would recommend using a longer knife than what I used. It took a long time for me to cut this hole with the knife I was using, but I did get it eventually, and I think this is going to be the perfect home for our miniature house. And I got one of the taller pumpkins, and so I wanted to actually make it have 2 stories in this house. And so I got some cardboard, traced the circumference of the pumpkin, kind of trimmed and adjusted it as needed, and created this base for the floor. And then I went through and painted the inside of the pumpkin. I'm just kind of sticking to a neutral brown color. I'm going to be really bringing out a lot of fall colors throughout this process. Next, I cut up some popsicle sticks. I just cut the ends off so that they would be straight, and I turned those into wood flooring and covered my cardboard with them. Then I stained them by just watering down some acrylic brown paint, and I trimmed off the edges and then hot glued a second piece of cardboard to cover up the bottom, and this also just helped reinforce and make that floor a lot stronger. And then it was ready to go inside of the pumpkin, so I just glued around the edges and set it inside. It was nice because the pumpkin kind of had these natural ridges, so it would sit on those really well and just stayed in place without any issues. Then I traced the circumference of the bottom because I wanted to cover that with some scrapbooking paper just to kind of look like carpet or a rug, just to kind of warm up the feeling in the house. I am going to be covering all the edges around the pumpkin and the edge of the flooring with something later on, so I won't leave those raw edges exposed, but you won't see that till the end of the video. Okay, now it was time to actually start on some of the fun little furniture and pieces that would go inside of the house. I started by cutting out some pieces of a chair, so I did 3 rectangles and then an arched back, and I covered each piece in some fabric just to kind of upholster this chair. I went with a cute yellow polka dot fabric because it kind of gave that fall vibe, and I'm hoping for kind of a fun cottagey look in this house. Then I glued the pieces together. I glued the back onto the seat, and then I glued the sides onto each side of the chair, and these will act kind of as armrests as well as feet to stabilize the chair, and I think it turned out really cute. I also wanted to make a little pillow to go with it, so I grabbed some fabric scraps, stitched those together to make kind of a quilted pattern, and then sewed that into just a little tiny pillow to sit on this chair. Filled it with some stuffing and cinched it closed, and then I wanted a little chair or a little table to go next to my chair, so I grabbed some random wood pieces that I had. I cut a dowel down to size, and I had these 2 little wooden circles in my scrap pile, and so I just went and glued those together, gave them a little bit of stain, and made this table that will sit next to the chair. Then I wanted to make a little potted plant, so I grabbed a bottle cap, and it's so fun doing these projects because you get to use trash, you get to recycle and reuse things, and it's kind of rewarding and really fun to get creative with that. So I'm covering this bottle cap with some twine, and this is just to give it that woven basket look, and then I'm going to put in a little plant inside of it, and I just used hot glue to glue all of that together. I wanted my basket to be a little bit taller than the height of the bottle cap, and so I actually just kept gluing on top of the rope and winding that around until it was the height that I wanted. Then I grabbed a sprig from my fall floral bin and glued that inside of the pot, and this turned out to be the cutest little dried tree for fall. I think it's so cute. Okay, next I was going to make some little pumpkins out of clay, but I realized that I had these pumpkins already sitting on my desk in this cute little jar. I thrifted the jar. I thrifted these little mini pumpkins, so I thought I'll decorate the house with these mini pumpkins. I also had some acorns and acorn shells in that little jar as well, so I'm going to do something with that later on in the video. Okay, next I wanted to make a jute rug, so I just glued some string in a spiral pattern and just kind of wound it around itself, similar to how I did the bottle cap, but this time it's just going to be flat and not get taller. And I just wound that repeatedly like you see me doing in this video until it was the size that I wanted, and you'll see in a minute how that turned out. Next, I wanted to make a fireplace, so I grabbed some popsicle sticks, and I have these little wooden plant stakes that you can like punch like the names of plants into, and I had some extra ones. So those are where I got the thicker pieces of wood from, and then the thinner pieces were popsicle sticks. So I built this little fireplace, painted it black, and I actually ended up using my hot glue gun to create kind of a design on each side of the fireplace just to make it look a little more ornate. And then I grabbed some tissue paper and cut out these little flames and made a little bundle of flames, and I grabbed some sticks from our backyard and used those to kind of make them look like logs. I also used a piece of cardboard as the back for this fireplace, and I kind of curved that piece of cardboard so that it created some dimension and the flames could sit right inside of the fireplace. Next, I wanted to create a little portrait to sit on top of the fireplace. I feel like in something like this, it's the details that really count and that make it so fun and whimsical. So I decided to paint a little ghost portrait. I just grabbed an old food box. This is a pizza roll box. Cereal boxes work really well for things like this, I've found. But I just cut out a rectangle and painted a cute little ghost. I wanted this to be a friendly ghost because we're going with all cute things over here. So I gave it a little bow and put some pumpkins behind the ghost, and I think it turned out super cute. I kind of want to create some kind of little stuffed animal or something to put inside of it to live in this house. I think my daughter will think that's so magical, especially as she gets older. I've thought about doing mice and making little mice to live inside of this house, but my husband suggested I make little ghosts. And now that I've made this portrait, I think that would be so cute. So maybe I'll have to do that another day. That will be a project for another day. But somebody needs to live in this cute little house, so I'm going to have to make something to go inside of it. I also made this little frame for the portrait and gave it a back, and I painted that frame with a gold shiny, it's kind of like a bronze metallic paint, and I'm going to use that same paint throughout the house to kind of give it that metal look. Next, I used my Cricut to cut out some little tiny leaves, like very, very small leaves, and glued them onto a piece of string, and then I glued that onto the fireplace. I wanted to create kind of a fall garland. I always hang a fall garland from our fireplace, and so I thought it would be a fun little touch to hang from this fireplace. I think it looks so cozy and ties in the colors so well. Next, I grabbed those little pumpkins that I am planning on using to decorate the house with, and I made some little pumpkin bundles, and I'll put those throughout the house to decorate with. The next thing I wanted to make was a bed, and so I grabbed some little dowels, and actually I think those were skewers that I grabbed and cut to make posts, and then I cut some other pieces of wood to size as well, and I had this little round piece of wood again in my wood scraps, so I'm going to use that as part of the bed frame, and I'm just gluing these posts to that round piece. Next, I grabbed the popsicle sticks, and I glued those coming straight out to create the frame for this bed, and then glued on some more posts, and then here is the front piece, and that will just go right in front, and it is actually really sturdy. I think it turned out really cute and actually was not that hard to make. I was surprised. Okay, next I needed to make a mattress, and originally I was going to use this foam board to do that, the same foam board that I used to cut out my chair. So this is actually like one of those like poster boards, foam poster boards, but I decided instead of that I would use some carpet padding. So we have some carpet padding that's been sitting in our garage from the previous owner because they redid all the carpeting in our house, and I've been using it for little crafts and projects here and there. So instead of using the foam board, I decided to use the carpet padding because it was the perfect size for a mattress, and I just covered that in some cute fabric, and that actually was, it couldn't have been more perfect. Like, I just feel like the thickness was just right to be a mattress, and it fits so well inside of the bed frame. I also really wanted to paint the bed frame to match the fireplace and tie in some of those darker colors because we've got a lot of the light neutral colors going on in this house, so I painted that black as well. And then I created a little bedspread. I just cut out fabric, and then I cut out another little piece of fabric to be like the blanket at the bottom, the throw blanket, and glued that on so that it would stay in place. And then I used some carpet padding and fabric to make a little pillow as well, and I think it turned out so cute. Next, I made a side table by grabbing a little wood round that I had and using some cut up glue sticks, and then I painted those with that same bronze color. So these are glue sticks from my glue gun. I also used an Easter egg shell, like one of those plastic ones, and a glue stick and a little round piece of wood to create this lamp, and then I painted the whole thing in that same bronze color. So I found that glue sticks are kind of nice when you need something that's a cylinder and that's skinny, because it's really easy to cut it, unlike a wooden dowel if you don't have special tools for that. And so I found that those worked really well. Okay, I also added some beads to my little acorn shells to act as bowls, and I wanted them to look like little berries, so I put some red beads inside. And then I decided to make some raspberry jam. So I have this little jar that I got from the dollar store forever ago, and it's this little tiny mini jar. And so I put some beads inside, glued some fabric on top, and then glued a piece of string around that, just to kind of look like a little mason jar full of raspberry jam. And I even made a little label for it and stuck it on, and I think it actually turned out so cute. This is the final product on the raspberry jam, and I just think it's adorable. So that's going to sit on one of the tables as well. I also made some books. I just covered a Scrabble piece, a little letter Scrabble piece, in some paper, and then made a label for it, and I made this cute little stack of books that will also sit on a table. Next, it was time to cover the outside of my pumpkin. I wanted to cover up all those raw edges that were just kind of not super cute and taking away from the look of the pumpkin house. So I added some raffia and then some other fall florals. Again, I just kind of raided my fall floral bin and used some sprigs that I had, and I honestly didn't take very many to cover this area because it wasn't a lot of surface area. Then I grabbed some little string lights, some of those cute little fairy lights, and they look like they're flickering in this video, and I know it has something to do with the shutter speed of my camera, but I didn't realize it when I filmed this, and so that's something I'm going to have to learn, how to adjust the shutter speed on my camera so that little twinkling lights like this don't sit there and flash at you, because in real life the lights are not flashing. But you kind of get the idea. You still kind of can feel the ambiance. So I actually wound some of these lights into the fireplace and the little lamp so that they looked like they lit up, and I think it turned out so cute. And then I got to do the fun part of placing all my furniture inside of the house. And I think this is so cozy. I have a 1-year-old daughter, so she's too young to play with this now. But I know that in a few years, this is going to be the most magical thing, and I'm going to let her enjoy it. Maybe one day it can go in her room to decorate for fall. And like I said, I might make some little characters to live inside of it. And I just think it is so cute. I am so excited for the day when my daughter is old enough to do projects like this with me. So I guess in the meantime, I'm just practicing. This is like all of my childhood dreams coming true. I love these cute little miniature scenes and these little doll houses. So we're going to have so much fun when she gets older. I hope she likes to craft, because I cannot wait to do things like this with her. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this little pumpkin house. What other details should I add to it? And would you try this? I'm curious. I have more fun projects coming your way soon. I make crafting, DIY, decorating, and organization videos on this channel, so it's all home-centered content, and we focus on things that are budget friendly, and we focus on being resourceful and reusing things that we already have, just making the most of what we have. So if that is something you're interested in, I would love to have you here on this channel. Hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. I post a video every Friday, and yeah, I will see you next week. Thank you again for tuning in, and I can't wait to hear from you down below in the comments.